Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another exciting Friday night. My name is John Liu. I have the privilege of serving in the New York State Senate and am proud to be charged by our leader, Andrew Stewart Cousins, with the responsibility of chairing the Senate's Committee on New York City Education. And I'm terrifically proud to be joined by my colleague in the State Senate and also a member of our committee, Senator Jamaal Bailey, in whose district we are. I want to thank him and his staff for helping to arrange this public forum. This is the third of a series of community forums that we're holding on the issue of specialized high school admissions and diversity in our public schools in New York City. And tonight we are in the Bronx, the kingdom of the Bronx.
Yes, God's country.
And I'm going to turn the floor over to Senator Bailey in a little bit just for his welcoming remarks. But I do want to say that we are having these community forums for the purpose of gathering input from anybody who has any idea, opinions, suggestions, recommendations about what to do or what not to do with our admissions process to the specialized high schools in New York City, 8 of which are based on an exam for admissions currently, and also the issue of diversity in our public schools in general. So there are people who across the city who have opinions about this, and that's what this forum is designed for. It is in contrast to what the city did last year, which is to put out a plan that would eliminate the admissions test for these specialized high schools. But when they did so last year, they did not consult with many people in the city and, in fact, left out the entire Asian American community. So it is, I have said over and over again, before we do anything about this, we actually need to hear from people, especially people who have a strong stake in the issue of the specialized high school admissions. And with that, we have a number of speakers signed up, but let me turn the floor over to Senator Jamaal Bailey.
Thank you, Senator Liu. So, I first want to thank you for your leadership in something that has been a very contentious, hot button topic because it's very important. It's about the future of our children in the city of New York, and I think as a father, as a senator, just as a person in the community, there is no greater asset that we have than our children, and making sure that our children's lives are properly cultivated is something that is of the utmost importance to me. So Chairman Liu, in your charge as the chairman of this subcommittee that Leader Stewart Cousins has entrusted in you, I appreciate your leadership in allowing us to have this forum here in the Bronx, where it's just outside of my district. We happen to be in the wonderful district of Senator Alessandro Biaggi. Hello, Senator Biaggi. And I just want to say a couple things. I see this from a few different lenses, right? So we are obviously in the footprint of the Bronx High School of Science, where I graduated from in 2000. And as a person of color, thank you. As a person of color, I've seen the numbers dwindle of black and brown students in specialized high schools, and it's given me some pause. It has given me personal concerns, but as a legislator, what I am tasked to do, what I am charged to do, is to listen to each and every view. Regardless of what my personal views may be, I am here to listen to you in the audience. I would ask that we do a couple of things here, that this is very important to us. I ask that we be respectful of others' views. If they are dissenting opinions, I ask that we are able to disagree without being disagreeable, and that at the end of the day, we realize that what we are trying to do is improve the lives of our children, regardless of zip code, regardless of race, creed, color, gender, anything. So with that being said, I'm excited to listen to what you have to say. I am confident that after all is said and done, that after all of the voices are heard, that we will make a decision about the future of our children in specialized high schools, but all of our children are special. So in every high school, in every middle school, in every elementary school in the city of New York, we have to get to the bottom of this. So in the back of your mind, while you're thinking about Shishat and specialized high schools and the 8 schools, think about every school. Think about every child that needs an education in this school, in this city, and making sure that we get that done for them. So with that being said, I will turn it over to, in the hands of our able chair, and he'll go over the ground rules about testimony and the conversation we're going to have today. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Senator Bailey. And I am also happy to be back at Lehman College. This is where, because our high school did not have any track facilities, we used to run on this campus. Thank you to Lehman College for lending us your track facilities and the hallways during which we ran in during the winters. I, too, am a proud graduate of the Bronx High School of Science. We graduated about the same time. Yeah. So, don't laugh, Yatin. I heard that. All right. So with that, let's call up, amazingly, the first person to arrive on the scene, Dr. Ivan Khan. Ivan Khan will be followed by Tahseen Chowdhury and Mark Crane.
How many minutes do we have?
And I think we can be a little bit more liberal with the time limit, so take your time, but don't, remember there are other people. And
Absolutely.
Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Ivan Khan. I've been a lifelong New York City public school student, a graduate of Bronx Science, and I also serve as the CEO of Khan's Tutorial, a supplemental education program with 11 locations serving the outer boroughs of New York City, with 2 in the Bronx right here, 1 in Parkchester, and 1 in nearby Castle Hill. For the past 5 years, our company, led by my teammate Rivu, has worked tirelessly to increase the number of Black and Latinx students at the specialized high schools through fully covered enrichment scholarships and community-based partnerships in North Brooklyn and Harlem. And most recently, we're proud to report that we've helped close to 40 Black and Latinx children. Firstly, I'd like to thank our dedicated Senate members, Senator Bailey, Senator Liu, for taking the time to engage our community that supports equity, achievement, and access in our beloved public schools for every single child. I'm speaking today to share some of the best practices that we've seen work for minority children from low-income neighborhoods to gain offers. One of our students, Alan Arias, recently wrote an eloquent op-ed in AM New York about the STEM partnership in North Brooklyn, and we couldn't be prouder of his hard work. The biggest factor helping our students was their early focus on grade level proficiency. Every single spring since grade school. Right now, unfortunately, only 25% of Black and Latinx children are grade level proficient in ELA and math across our city. And if only 44% of Black and Latinx students are applying to specialized high schools, we'll keep getting that terrible only 11% of children from Black and Latinx homes are getting in. That's a continued travesty, and improving grade level proficiency is the very first step, in my opinion. I've seen firsthand and experienced how important accelerated programs like GNT are for low-income families. I know of a family from Parkchester in the Bronx who had immigrated to New York. Their 2 brothers, Tabrez and Tobias. The parents wanted to enroll them into the GNT program locally, and they qualified, but they couldn't find a seat in the Bronx. So the only option left to them was Tag Young Scholars in Manhattan. So every day, from the age of 12, this immigrant child would have to get on the train with his mom to travel to school in Manhattan, only because there was not a TNG school in his district or his entire borough. Eventually, after Tabrez finished up at Bronx Science, where he became the valedictorian at Bronx Science, and then he's at MIT now. His younger brother also ended up at Bronx Science with terrific scores, and these are amazing, incredibly driven kids from the Bronx. At the same time, why should any single middle school child at the age of 12 not have access to these amazing programs in our own communities in the Bronx? So during the Giuliani era, IGC and SP, what we grew up with, fell apart across New York's poorest neighborhoods due to the lack of equitable funding. Later on, unfortunately, the Bloomberg administration decided to centralize the accelerated programs due to the disparities seen from school to school to school. Though the DOE had promised access to these scarce district-wide programs, they never provided any transportation or facilitated awareness to high-achieving, underrepresented Black and Latinx families. I support bringing back equitable funding for our schools, transparency and reporting by the DOE, improvements to the structure of the GNT pathways, and if we can revamp that and include Renzulli training for teachers and administrators at every school, we can work towards improved equity and excellence for every type of accelerated learner. I personally oppose an exam being a 4-year-old being the only way you can get into GNT. I support the exploration of greater numbers of G&T pathways and a greater emphasis on culturally relevant education each and every single one of our classrooms. Finally, I'd like to echo my support for the SHSAT, as it's been a vehicle for thousands of low-income minorities to gain a great education in our otherwise failing school system to lift us out of poverty. It's also prevented abuse by the privileged and the wealthy who have used phone calls to get their children into the top screen schools. I support the doubling of specialized high school seats, especially with more high schools created in the Bronx. I support exploring newer pathways for these new schools. And I'd like to absolutely support bringing back the old school IGC and SP classes to improve G&T in expanded ways throughout the city. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Dr. Khan. Next up, Tahsin Chowdhury. And on deck is Mark Crane and Thomas Shepard. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tahsin Chowdhury. I've had the humble honor of serving as the president of the Stuyvesant Student Union. My parents immigrated to New York City from Bangladesh in the mid-90s looking for better opportunities. My father has worked at a deli for over 3 decades, and my mother has delivered newspapers for over a decade. Now she's a home health aide. I've attended public school my entire life. Like many first-generation immigrants, my story is not too different from those of immigrants before me, whether they be from South America, West Africa, East Asia, the Caribbean, or the West Indies. As a first-generation immigrant, I absolutely support measures to increase diversity at the specialized high schools. The fact that only about 11% of Black and Hispanic students get into specialized high schools is deeply tied to grade 3 to 8 proficiency. In 2018, Black and Hispanic students only comprised of 44% of applicants, and when proficiency levels are at 25% across New York City, mathematically one would expect about 11% of offers to go to Black and Hispanic students. We're failing our Black and Hispanic students long before the transition to high school. It's a systemic failure. One of the most discriminatory practices my community and I have ever experienced was when the mayor and chancellor attempted to pass legislation affecting the SHSAT with less than 2 weeks left in the session. Not a single Asian community leader was consulted. This isn't a political game, it's our children's education. Rather than consider the mayor's proposal as the only solution to the diversity problem, leaders in the Senate and the Assembly have the power to bring back accelerated programs we phased out, like IGC, SP, and honors programs. I have yet to understand how failing 75% of our Black and Hispanic students across the city is acceptable. We have the ability to target students who are struggling, and we have the ability to support them, yet the DOE time and time again fails to do so. Corona, one of the largest hubs of the Latinx community in New York City, also happens to have some of the most overcrowded schools New York City has ever seen. Overcrowding means students are sitting on radiators and in the hallways. It means having a gymnatorium, a combined cafeteria, gymnasium, and auditorium shared between multiple schools squeezed into one building. It especially means refusing to give our students an equitable opportunity. Everyone deserves the same opportunity I had. It's about time we expand the specialized high schools and create more pathways to high-achieving schools while integrating from a much earlier age. Thank you for holding this hearing and allowing me to speak on behalf of Bangladeshi New Yorkers.
Thank you, Tahsin. All right, Mark Crane, to be followed by Thomas Shepard and Charles Varuska.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having this hearing. Really appreciate it. In September, my homeschooled daughter entered a specialized school where she is happy and successful, and she's working very hard. Having these very high-performance public high schools as an option is vital to the planning of many low-income parents like myself. There are almost 500 other high schools with the exact same funding as these schools for the city to tinker with. However, because these are the only schools to use a standardized test for admission, and the others use subjective measures, such as grades, which are based on a standard created in each classroom, the SHSAT is the only objective, race-blind gauge left for revealing the success or failure of the New York City Department of Education. In fact, when my daughter had to go to the local school to take the standardized state test, teachers roamed the aisles, correcting mistakes, including my daughter's. As a former New York City teacher, I know this is routine in failing schools. Recently, extremely low admission rates served as a canary in the coal mine, exposing how the New York City schools are scandalously failing Black and Latinx kids. That's a new one. I didn't know Latinx till tonight. I have known this for over 30 years, as have the tide of new teachers who leave the Department of Ed every year disgusted with the corrupt lack of accountability that enables appalling neglect to persist year after year. Most high-poverty schools are focused on safely warehousing kids, showing little interest in overcoming failing strategies or poorly performing veteran teachers. It is a systemic neglect. Grades determined by failing teachers and failing principals for the purpose of supporting their failing schools must not be the new standard for admission. What is actually needed is a revolutionary change of educational approach. Destroying the evidence of failure by eliminating the racially blind SHSAT will not help African American communities in the slightest, but will make the systemic neglect of their children by New York City schools impossible to detect. We need this test. We need the specialized schools. Incidentally, many of us attended the City Council hearing on May 1st, which began with Chair Mark Traeger telling us the purpose of the hearing was to listen to the community's concerns. After which he called opponents to the changes racist, as did Chancellor Carranza. And then for 5 hours, all they and Corey Johnson allowed were their own opinions, giving long speeches supporting their own plans. After 5 hours, they all left. The cameras all left. And only then were we permitted to speak, though there was no one left to listen. This is not being open to public comment because this change could not withstand open scrutiny. Thanks again, guys, for being here.
Thank you. Thomas Shepard, to be followed by Charles Varuska and Yatin Chu. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Thomas Shepard. First, I am a father of 3 children currently attending New York City Public Schools. I am also an education advocate and member of the District 11 CEC. I work with educators, our community elected leaders, and the Alliance for Quality Education in addressing equity issues facing our children and families. And notably, I attended Brooklyn Tech in the 1980s. We are here today to address the need for equity in the admissions process for specialized high schools in New York City. Addressing this honestly means we must first acknowledge that the current process is failing the vast majority of our most gifted and talented Black and Latino students. In District 11, for example, there are only 9 students attending specialized high schools this fall. In a school district with a little more than 3,000 8th graders, only 1 in roughly 350 students were offered an opportunity to attend these 8 schools. That is a 0.3 admissions rate for District 11. And when compared to the already low 7% citywide average for Black and Latino students, the number is almost 0. At Stuyvesant High School, the numbers are even more dismal. In an incoming class of 895 freshmen, only 7 are Black. Now, there are those who would say that the system failed our children long before they ever got to middle school. While I somewhat agree with that assertion, I would disagree with the argument that our teachers are failing our children. They work under the most challenging conditions, doing the best they can with the limited tools they are given to teach our children. I would be remiss if I didn't thank them for the hard work they do every day. I want to be clear that this discussion is not directed at their efforts, but rather a system that underserves a large segment of our population. We do our children an enormous disservice when we allow systematic failures to become obstacles to their success. I feel the solution to this problem requires courage by our political leaders to challenge the status quo. My response to those who would suggest that there is nothing wrong with the specialized high school admissions process is this. There is absolutely something wrong when you can, using only your fingers, count the number of children in an entire school district that are admitted to specialized high schools, or count on your fingers the number of black children admitted to a single specialized high school, and in both cases, have fingers left over. We must, and I urge all of you, to do the right thing by all of our children. Law and policy are the tools we use as a society to define our collective morality. I urge our community leaders to forego political expediency and do what's right. If we understand that all of our children are not being equally served by this admissions process, and a single test does not create a school population that is reflective of the city in which that population lives, then designing a multiple measure process to ensure equity for all of our students is the right thing to do. I'm compelled to push back against the current process until it guarantees all children access to the best education we as a society can give them so they may realize their dreams and live their best lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shepard. Charles Veruska, to be followed by Yatin Chu and Annie Chen. Thank you.
I love this city, and I'm proud that this city has some of the best high schools in our country. And these schools have provided opportunity for generations of New York City children. They call these schools elite, but they're not for the elite. They provided opportunities for children of immigrants. They provided opportunity for poor children, for working class children, for middle class children. And how do they get in there? It's by the SHSAT. They know, these children, if they work hard and they use their God-given ability, they can attend some of the best schools in our country. The SHSAT is objective and merit-based. So I ask you, why is it that Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Carranza want to get rid of the SHSAT? Because the SHSAT is exposing the failure in the DOE. We've seen with the MathGate scandal, which broke in the last 2 weeks, there's a huge grade fraud scandal that is going on in the city. There were children who are passing their math classes at 93% in schools, when only 2% of those children are passing the state tests. If parents aren't being given an accurate grade, if they're being given a fraudulent grade, how are they going to hold their teachers, their principals, and Chancellor Carranza accountable? This scandal needs to be investigated. If we have fraudulent grades, we cannot make sure that every child has a great education, especially in math. My friend Mike Machete from the Science School Initiatives, he volunteered his time to go into schools to help children prepare for the SHSAT. When he was brought into a school in Norwood in the Bronx, the principal gave her best students. All of the students had over 95 in math, but not one of those children could add fractions with different denominators. That is a scandal, and we have to stop this grade fraud and have grades that are accurate and reliable. We also need to bring back gifted and talented programs. These programs were the pipeline to the specialized high schools. We've seen alumni from these schools talk about the great programs in their middle schools. Gifted and talented programs, SP programs, honors programs. We have a bill that's sponsored by Senator Adabo, S3878. I believe you all should co-sponsor this bill and pass it, because this would ensure that every elementary school has an advanced class. Every intermediate school has an SP or honors class. And every district has a district-wide tested gifted and talented program. We can provide all types of gifted and talented programs in our city because we have the ability to do that. Why are we not raising all children up instead of bringing children down like the mayor wants to do? I urge you not to eliminate the SHSAT. Do not repeal Heck Calandra, and do not engage in this political cover-up with our mayor and our chancellor. Thank you.
Thank you. Yatin Chu, followed by Annie Chen, Lillian Annie Chen, and Morgan Ellenson. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is this on?
It's on, yeah.
Okay, great. My name's Yatin Chu. I am a parent of 2 kids in public schools and a Bronx Science alumnus. Thank you. It's been over 30 years since I've been back in this area. For many of us attending Bronx Science, it was the first time we stepped out of our home neighborhoods, first time taking the subways by ourselves, and the first time we were surrounded by people smarter than we were. Recently, a journalist asked me, what makes specialized high schools so special? Is it the teachers? Is it the curriculum? Is it the kids? It is all of the above, but if I had to rank them, number 1 would be the kids, because we all got in based on one test, the SHSAT. No matter what middle school you went to, you can take the test. Many specialized high school alumni want to keep the SHSAT. I can't speak for every one of them, but for me, I want to make sure that all of our New York City students get the same opportunity that I was given through this test. Many of us feel that de Blasio's proposal to eliminate the test is driven by politics, to favor the majority group of New York City voters and penalizing another group of traditionally quiet non-voters. I will put that politics aside today. And true to my science education, let's talk about the research that's been done on the test. The METIS study commissioned by the DOE found that the SHSAT to be highly predictive of high school performance. Another study, frequently quoted, says 7th grade GPA is better at predicting high school GPA. Well, I'm here to say that both studies did not look at the right outcomes. In the real world, who cares about 9th grade GPA? No one is and should be judged by their 9th grade GPA as success. The SHSAT was not designed to identify those who can earn 99s in 9th grade. The SHSAT is supposed to identify STEM talent. Does LaGuardia auditions correlate with those students' 9th grade GPA? Probably not. So what is the right outcome to evaluate the SHSAT? I assert that it is to identify the future engineers, mathematicians, and science professors. For LaGuardia, the right outcome is whether it graduates future musicians, dancers, and actors. The proof is in what you can see, the long list of notable alumni from these schools. I've heard that no other high school uses SHSAT. Well, no other high school in the world can compare to what the New York City specialized high schools have cultivated. For my class of '85, they've gone on to careers in academia, in medicine, in research, in law, in business, and in politics. Let's think about ways to create more opportunities for our talented youth in STEM, not less. Keep the SHSAT for all New York City kids and open more specialized high schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lillian Annie Chen. To be followed by Morgan Ellison and Yun Bao Guo. Okay, thank you. Page 2.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lillian, but I read the statement on behalf of my daughter, Annie. She can't speak tonight due to her personal reason. Here is what she wrote. My name is Annie Chen. I'm an 8th grader. I'm here to support Shazat. My parents are very strict on my performance at school. They keep saying that only education can change your life and the world. I think they're right. I did my state test all at 4 level and a GPA all more than 98. I got 4 attendance. I have good comments from my teachers by my self-discipline, nice behavior, teamwork, and studying hard. Anyway, I'm okay with my performance and I'm very proud of myself. Last year, my mom encouraged me to challenge myself and have a different experience by taking SHSAT. I accepted her advice and I took the test. Even I know I'm not that good at math, but I'm glad I tried. My score didn't high enough to get into my ideal school, which is more specialized in social study and history. But I still can choose 3 other special high schools which are specialized in math and science. But I give them up because I think those schools are not my best fit. My parents respected my choice. And I know 2 of my classmates all have offers from LaGuardia and Stuyvesant, but the girl chose to LaGuardia because she enjoys art more, and the boy chose to Stuyvesant because he enjoys math the most. I can see my classmates all choose school which fits themselves the most. Recently, my mom suddenly talked about racism while talking about SHSAT. I didn't care about SHSAT at all till she bring this up. I feel I have something to say now. I don't agree to the saying that some parents can afford expensive tutoring, which is not fair because not everyone can afford it. As we may know, everybody can choose how to spend their own money. There's nothing wrong with parents investing their money on their kids' education. If there is a reason we have to, if it is the reason we have to debate for, surely DOE should offer free SHSAT tutoring for all. Then all the low-income parents don't have to work so hard to save every penny for kids' tutoring anymore. Offering SHSAT review books for all is the second solution if DOE cannot afford free tutoring for all. Adding SHSAT to our school daily schedule is the third solution so that all of us don't need any tutoring after school anymore. I believe all parents think all their kids deserve a free tutoring for finding out their kids' potential and interests on STEM. And we'll have a seat at special high school happily and enjoyably. The more STEM students, the more Nobel Prize winners, the better the city will be, the better USA will be. I'm just a teenager, so I don't associate with racism a lot, other than in history class or reading the news. But I believe racism is a serious problem that is affecting our society and should not be used for ridiculous reason by the mayor and the chancellor. And isn't SHSAT the best way to prevent racism in our special and complicated school system? The test can't see the color of the student's skin, can't hear whether or not the student has an accent, and it doesn't know whether or not the student has any disability. By the way, I think we should learn how to do well in a test because we have to have lots of tests in our life anyway. I wish the mayor and the chancellor would wisely and fairly choose to keep CHSAT for all those students who enjoy in math and are well prepared for the special STEM high schools. Please kindly create more STEM high schools for more and more students who enjoy math and are well prepared already in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. Morgan Ellenson, to be followed by Yun Bao Guo and Yifang Chen.
Good evening. We are in the footprint of Bronx Science, but we are also in the footprint of the High School of American Studies, which is on the Lehman College campus. Nancy Goray is an alumni of. I was her teacher. I'm really terrible at this kind of stuff, unlike everyone else I've heard who seems really polished and brilliant, so I'm just going to try and hold my own for a moment. My name's Morgan. I'm a Bronx resident, as was my grandfather. I'm a dad. My children, two 10-year-olds, are being raised here in the Bronx. And like those young people that Mr. Khan mentioned a moment ago, my kids commute since the age of 5 on the 2 train to Manhattan to a public G&T. That was a choice we made. They get a lot of reading done on the 2 train. Got to keep those Kindles charged. I've taught 19 of my 20 years as a teacher in the Bronx, as did my father. I'm invested in seeing our community schools succeed. So I think I've got some credibility here too, and I just wanted to share something. I think it's got to be agreed upon that schools are always better when there are varied and diverse voices in our classrooms. I attended Stuyvesant in the late 80s, and there was no clear majority then. The school was more diverse. I teach at a specialized high school where the varied voices of the city have always been represented. And while the balance changes, I still see that diversity only improves a learning experience. I've experienced it. I've seen it. However, I, unlike many I've heard, don't see the pushback from parents on either side of this issue as a product of hate or from people hoping to see less inclusiveness, or I don't think anyone wishes to see these schools become less impressive. I just don't hear that. Unlike many teachers, I believe NYC public schools are good enough, if not fantastic options, for my own children. As do I think all of the parents who are here tonight and who have come to these places. We really believe these are the schools our kids should be going to. I just fear, and I think I hear that from a lot of my neighbors here in the Bronx, I live in the middle of the Bronx, that the current proposal as written may only end up masking inequities, not being addressed in our K through 8 schools. Very few parents in my community in the center of the Bronx, part of Biaggi's district also, don't send their children beyond elementary school to the public schools. I think real, genuine integration of our city schools is not only a laudable goal, it's a moral imperative. But I'm grateful that I'm seeing it being addressed. I just don't want a quick fix. And I fear that this proposal appears again to only mask the city's failure to draw in city residents who aren't choosing public schools for their children. When my own peers at one of the best-rated high schools here in New York City, in New York State, if you read U.S. News World Report, they opt to relocate to privileged, monolithic demographic suburbs, white, for their own children's education. I think that is an indication that the retention of people into the system is really the key to integration, not simply just shuffling some seats in the top. Making diversity a norm at the elementary ages in all our neighborhood schools, I think we can do it. I want to make the specialized high schools more diverse. This proposal, again, makes me feel like a quick fix that would improve the classroom I work in immediately. It would be tremendous for my school. It would not drop the academic performance of my school. It would be great. It just doesn't solve any of the underlying issues that are creating this situation, and I think that has to be addressed. My 10-year-olds attend a school currently right now where last year 55 kids received offers from a specialized high school. They're at a public K through 8 here in the city. The mayor's plan, if it goes into effect, when my two 10-year-olds apply to high school, only 3 kids from that middle school will have the option to go to a specialized high school. I think when we limit the number of winners or change who the winners are in the system, we're not fixing the system. I see all opposition melting to any proposal you guys make to us stakeholders, not to bystanders, not to grandstanders, but to us, the parents. I think we all will see this as a genuine effort if there really is a sense it's not about 8 schools and we're done. It's about improving a system, and I really hope that this is what this conversation is going to lead us to. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Ellenson. Yun Bao Guo, to be followed by Yi Fang Chen and Kim Famous. Thank you, Mr. Guo.
Thanks, Senator Bailey. I'm from your home district.
All right.
And thank you, Ru. Our education system is broken. Only 7 black students received an offer to attend Stuyvesant High School this year. The question is why the black and Hispanic youth are not doing well. Scratching the test will only serve to blindfold our own eyes. Some first-generation Asian Americans succeeded because of a healthy sense of self-esteem and peer pressure. Peer pressure not only in the United States, but also from overseas. For example, from China, where school entry requirements are getting incredibly demanding. By gearing up against the most formidable challenges the world presents, the Asian Americans are among the best prepared in the United States to win the global competition. They should be cherished, not penalized. The mayor and the governor could do monstrous things. I had a promising e-commerce business on Wall Street before 9/11. February 6, 2001, the South Democratic Southern befell. A city and a state proposed New York Stock Exchange expansion project demand that we vacate our office within 5 months, but offer no compensation for business relocation. The New York Stock Exchange new tower was never built, but we got evicted anyway at the end of 2002 after having been hit from the left and the right and strangled without an dedicated internet access for e-commerce business for nearly a year. Totally ruined my business and career. After I relocated to Bronx with a Section 8 voucher, no company would want to talk to me anymore because of the stigma attached to the location. In a society accustomed to all sorts of profiling, the notion that black and Hispanic youth may not succeed on SHSAT, the annual admission test, that's not only an insult, but a psychological genocide and a massive career killer. De Blasio School Diversity Plan is a surprising revisit of what Mao Zedong, I don't know if many people know, the dictator of China during the Cultural Revolution. Wow. Eliminating school admission tests, recruiting students place-based, directly from factories, farmers, and the military. Students were not motivated to learn math, science anymore, and teachers were concerned only about political correctness. Mao died 10 years later, but the disastrous economic education void he left behind was extremely hard to refill, and that continued to haunt the country even as of today. Mayor de Blasio, please do not follow Mao's steps. This is no time for political show, but a solid action to address our real root cause ills. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Guo. Yifang Chen, followed by Kim Famous and Phil Wang.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yifan Chen, and I'm a mother of 2 children, with one of them currently attending public elementary school. I also attended public high school in New York City when I arrived in this country as a teenager without speaking English. Today, I work as a data scientist with 10 plus years of experience analyzing data and building statistical models after obtaining my PhD degree in statistics from Stanford University. So so I didn't go to a specialized high school. When I came to this country, I didn't make it. And also, when I first arrived, my parents, my dad used to work as a construction worker, making minimum wage. My mom used to work in a garment factory, so they couldn't really afford providing me with means and then resources to know there's actually specialized high school entrance test. But that doesn't stop me. So later on in my career, I had to take all different kind of tests. I remember buying a used SAT book for $10 while I was preparing for SAT exams. And later on, when I was applying to grad schools, I had to take GRE test to get in. So I want to make following points. First, it is really upsetting to see that certain diversity groups misconduct studies and misinterpret results and conclude that testing and GNT are not useful and think they are the cause of segregation in our school system. It is tempting to assume that one pattern causes another without taking into account of confounding or lurking variables. I'm a statistician, so the terms may be a little too abstract for you. So the lurking variable here is the failing of our K-8 education. A classic example is the observation that when ice cream sales go up, drowning in the swimming pools increases. Does ice cream cause drowning? No. The lurking variable is it is a hot summer day, which boosts ice cream sales and swimming drowning. Second, a quota-based admission criteria using race and ethnicity is wrong and unlawful. It's unlawful. It pits one minority group against another, and it will not solve the problem of failing K-8 education. Using GPA will result in corruptions, including multiple measures. Sounds like a good idea, but does DOE have the money and resource under current financial situation? Until a better measurement could be found, testing is a universal colorblind criteria to measure performance. It measures performance to read, write, and do basic math. We need to test to become doctors and lawyers. And when we go on to interviews, we need to be able to answer those technical questions to see if we are a fit for the position. Third, we live in New York City. We want schools to excel and to have diversity. Personally, this is also what brought me back to this great city after spending years in the West Coast for its diversity. So like I keep saying, the remedy is to fix these failing schools. K-8, expand GNT, expand advanced placement classes. As a parent, I want best education for my children, but I want the best education for all children in our New York City. In the council testimony 2 weeks ago, Mark Trigger didn't like it. It was like 7 or 8 o'clock. He didn't like it when I said failing schools. But if majority of student body is performing math and ELA below grade level, would you want to send your kids there? If parents are choiced out, they will do whatever they can in the best interest of the children. This including moving out of New York City altogether. Have you considered the economic impact of large amount of middle-class family taxpayers fleeing the beloved New York City? There are many taxpayers fleeing already. So the fourth point I make is that Chancellor Richard Carranza is getting the causation wrong. He's blaming the diversity for the failure of schools. But the truth is that the failing schools are causing what he called lack of diversity. He needs to stop covering up failing students, failing schools, and stop racism and bullying against hardworking Asian Americans. Carranza said last week at the 510 Council hearing at City Hall, and I quote, Asian inputs on Seychelles would have made no difference. Is it because we are minority and we are only 10% of New York City population? Is it right to shut others out when they don't agree with you? If so, I say Carranza is a real racist. And New York City is no place for a dictator like that. He should be out. I know it's easier to pit one minority against the other and social engineer and bring diversity than actually do the hard work and raise the quality of our schools. After all, specialized high school is only a tiny percent of all schools. But what happens to the other schools? Anyone who has a reasonable mindset should know that pinpointing a few elite schools is too little and it's too late. You need to fix it at the earlier stage. And also, it's very important that we teach our kids to learn how to read, write, and do basic math at a very earlier age. And if there's demand for better schools, specialized high schools, GNTs, then build more of them. Create more GNT classes. Lastly, I really feel for one of the black ladies at the last meeting when she said, it's a tough world there. It's a very tough world out there. Please help us raise our kids and then prepare them for the future. This is exactly right. We are in a technology era where STEM and then the skills in technology, big data, artificial intelligence is really in ever increasing demand. So we really need to keep our competitive edge in this world by providing best education for all of our children. And that means keep Seychelles and expand GNT. Thank you.
So, thank you for your testimony. Again, and I appreciate the passion. If we could just limit any personal attacks to anybody, whatever your personal feelings may be, I know it's a really important issue, but we should not devolve to calling people racists or accusing people of things. Like I understand the passion for it, but we have to be agreeable without we can disagree without being disagreeable. That is what I said at the beginning of that is what I asked at the beginning of the hearing, and I'm simply asking for some decorum. I'm not taking away your perspective. I'm asking for people not to be called racists. That's all I'm asking.
Oh, gosh. Guys.
All right.
That's all.
Let's hear
That's
from
all I'm
Kim
asking.
Famous.
Hi,
Kim Famous to be
everyone.
followed by Phil Wong and Eleanor George.
I did not prepare a personal statement, but will speak from the heart and what I believe to be my truth. Can you guys hear me? My name is Kim Famous, and I'm a parent member of the SLT at IS 181 in Co-op City in District 11. When this school was a gifted and talented program, 40% of the students would test into specialized high school. Now, after 5 years of the school being demoted to an honors program instead of GNT, less than 5% of our students are getting into specialized high schools. Our communities are separate but not equal and are segregated by zip code. My husband and I grew up 1 mile away from each other, he in the South Bronx and me in East Harlem. My brother-in-law dropped out of school at the age of 12 years old and has been incarcerated intermittently for the next 30 years of his life. Because my brother and I lived in Manhattan, we were able to go to school downtown in District 2. Me to Hunter High School, and my brother through Oliver program became Ivy League educated and now lives in Hong Kong and works as a global financial strategist. This is just one example of the disparity that is found between different neighborhoods based on social economics. And if we do not catch children at the middle school age, they are left to their own devices or can potentially achieve their full potential. We know that there are a limited number of seats for specialized high school. I propose instead that each borough has a school that's comparable locally and that addresses the socioeconomic factors that affects admission process at the quote-unquote best schools. We do not all need to have seats at specialized high schools. There are schools that test higher in performance standards than the specialized high school, such as Eleanor Roosevelt in Manhattan and Townsend Harris in Queens. And at these schools, they have prioritization for kids who are from those boroughs. And these percentages are as much as 98 to 100%. At Eleanor Roosevelt, you could not get into that school unless you went to middle school in District 2. And you cannot go to school in middle school in District 2 unless you pretty much were conceived in District 2. Because that is how the system works. We know these factors are hell-bent against us from the time we are born or migrate here. Other examples of schools that prioritize by zip code and district are New York City Lab School, the New York City Museum School in Manhattan, and the Baccalaureate Global Studies Schools in Queens. We need to stop creating this culture of competition and promote a program that creates well-rounded individuals. And I propose that we do that by addressing locally and having comparable schools in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Phil Wong, to be followed by Eleanor George and James Berry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks.
Good evening, Senator Liu and members of the Senate New York City Education Committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Phil Wong, the current member of the Community Education Council in School District 24. I respect my time limit, so I will only read about half of the speech. But before I read it, I would like to tell two stories. Some of you have heard it before, but it's important for everybody to hear it. Story number one is that I took the SHSAT in Brooklyn Tech in 1980, October 1980. That's 9 years after Hecalandra. And in an auditorium with 700 students taking the test, I was the only Asian. I was the only Asian. That's the first story. The second story is that I would like to, everyone go home later, to read about an editorial written by Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr. He published it in CaribbeanNews.com, and he spoke about his education experience in District 7 of the South Bronx. He graduated from PS 31 in the South Bronx, District 7, by the way, and recently, right before he wrote the article, he was shocked to discover that not only does PS 31 no longer offers the Gifted and Talented program in which he graduated from. In fact, the entire District 7 in the South Bronx has 0 gifted and talented programs. The truth. Thank you. Then I myself did a little research, and this is not an isolated case in the city of New York. In fact, there's at least 7 other school districts in New York City with 0 gifted and talented programs. And they did not disappear overnight. They were systematically removed over the years. Yesterday in Times Square, when de Blasio announced his candidacy to run for president, I was protesting outside in ABC Studios. And several reporters asked me, hey, I know what you're saying. The GNT programs are gone. It's not this mayor, Bloomberg's fault. He eliminated it. It doesn't matter. He's the mayor. De Blasio's the mayor. Bring them back. Bring them back. You level the playing field, let every district have their children there have equal access to the best schools. Thank you. Okay, with that out of the way, I would like to read the second half of my speech. Getting rid of the SAT, if we do that, we're sending the wrong message to children of color here in New York and nationally. That the only way they can get into a specialized high school is by eliminating the admission test. We're telling all the Black and Latinx and Asian and Caucasian students who work so hard to prepare for and who gain admission to the specialized high school of their choice on their own merit by taking the SAT that their achievement now counts for nothing. This is a horrible message when there are a host of positive and powerful messages that can be broadcast today. Now take a look at the audience in this room and the people in this committee. There are excellent role models in government today, parents of all races and ethnicity who are actively involved in fighting for better schools. Promote achievements of respected professors and people of note in business and in academia. Take their message and bring it into neighborhood schools and local communities where decades of neglect have produced the horrible outcome you see today. Bring back advanced curriculum, SP classes, honors, and GNT programs. Inject social care and discipline back into schools. One, do not allow the media to overwhelm with negative news reports and videos of violent crime, gang shootings, home invasions, and worse. Do allow powerful, positive messages from role models such as public advocate Jumaane Williams, Kamala Harris, and Kristen Joy Foy. In 2016, the Pew Research Center ranked the United States 40th place out of 73 countries in math literacy and 25th place in science literacy and 24th place in reading literacy. Singapore topped all nations in all three categories, followed by China, Japan, Korea, Canada, Switzerland, Estonia, Australia, and New Zealand. Now, Mark Tucker, the president of the National Center on Education and the Economy, cautioned us. We're living in a world that is highly integrated, and the United States cannot long operate a world-class economy if our workers are, as the OECD statistics show, among the worst educated in the world. This is not the time to cut funding or to lower standards for education. Please pass along this message to Mayor de Blasio, Majority Leader Stuart Cousins, Governor Cuomo, and the Education Secretary DeVos. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Eleanor George, to be followed by James Berry and Jonathan Halabi. Thank you.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank Senator Jamaal Bailey for even having this forum, because this letter that I'm going to read to you, I mailed to, or rather online, submitted to Mayor de Blasio, and I hand-delivered this to Andy King, the other politician in my district. It was only Jamaal Bailey's office who actually sat down with me, and we discussed it, and he even shared his ideas. I also am an alumni of Bronx High School of Science, class of '78. I'm also a parent of 3 children. As a single parent, I had them educated in New York City. I'm currently a New York City elementary school teacher in District 11 also for 18 years. And as a result of the education inequity that I've seen for my entire lifetime, this summer I founded an organization or a company called Enlightenment Now, LLC. And our objective is to promote education equity, because our mantra is a quality education or access to information should not be dependent on your zip code. We're about leveling the playing field, and I think that is the message that everyone is sharing, that the objective that you want to receive doesn't come from eliminating a test, but about raising the bar in the educational school system. I went to a conference in Tennessee, an education equity conference sponsored by ASCD, an organization that's nationwide. There were district superintendents, administrators, teachers. All of the pieces in the playing field were there. But they were promoting one thing, education equity. And I shared in one of the conferences what Mayor de Blasio was doing with eliminating this test. And the speaker said, so in other words, he's lowering the bar. Exactly. By eliminating this test, we will be lowering the bar. So I'm just going to read to you what the mayor did not answer me on. The specialized high school test, should the test be eliminated? The specialized high school standards test will be administered in October for the New York City school students. There is a controversy over whether the test should be eliminated. Opponents of this test claim that there is a deterrent to achieving diversity and acceptance by currently underrepresented students, especially African Americans and Hispanic Americans in specialized high school. I am a female, African American, Bronx High School of Science graduate, and former BOSS, Black Organization for Student Strength participant on the campus when I attended. I took the rigorous standardized test for Bronx High School of Science, and I passed it. Additionally, had I not passed the standardized test, I could have extended myself to the Discovery Program during the summer and given another chance to attend Bronx High School of Science. The Discovery Program is still available to those students who do not pass the test by a small margin. Therefore, the problem is not with the test. The problem lies with the preparation, or lack thereof, afforded underrepresented students to enable and empower them to pass the test, as well as the lack of education equity and comprehensible information access across the public school system in New York City. Now I'm going to share my story. The middle school that I attended was in the Soundview section of the Bronx, Albert Einstein Intermediate School 131, where Wesley Snipes graduated from. The school was located near Monroe, Bronxdale, and Soundview projects. The demographics of the school was comprised mainly of African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Additionally, Asian Americans and Italian Americans were also, they were in the minority. A vast majority of the families in the community were working class families. During the 8th grade, our class was visited by the guidance counselor who told us about the various high school options. The guidance counselor lauded the praises of vocational high schools, the only option he presented. Even though my average was in the 90s, I was encouraged to go to a vocational high school. When I shared the wonderful news with my parents that I was going to a vocational high school, my mother looked at me, but didn't utter a word. The next day, she went to my middle school and had a meeting with the principal. Basically, she said, "How dare you only offer vocational high schools to my daughter and her class?" The next day, the guidance counselor returned to the class and offered us other options. He stated there were specialized high schools such as Bronx High School of Science, Stuyvesant, Brooklyn Tech, Music and Art and Design, and Performing Arts, all of which required entrance examinations. Once given the information and opportunity, I applied to both Bronx High School of Science and Music and Art. Happily, I was accepted into both schools. I chose to go to Bronx High School of Science because I was given options and opportunities that empowered me to make a viable choice. Otherwise, I would have been steered in another direction, the plight of too many underrepresented students today. Unfortunately, this remains a large part of the problem, the perception of African American and Hispanic students in underrepresented communities. It is almost as if the systematic underlying notion was, why offer the choice of specialized high schools to students who won't probably pass the test anyway? Unfortunately, this and other negative attitudes, implied bias, and perceptions may still be apparent beneath the surface today, thereby resulting in education inequity. In addition, parents didn't have to pay for expensive tutors or test preparation specialists to help their child pass the specialized tests in my middle school. For those students who wanted to apply for Science, Stuyvesant, and Brooklyn Tech, IS 131 offered test prep classes in the morning before class began, about 2 to 3 weeks before the exams. These test preparation classes were offered free to any student who wanted to attend. The teachers in my school were the instructors. Consequently, 4 students from my school passed the specialized high school tests, attended and graduated from Bronx High School of Science. Yeah, that's an amazing statistic. 2 of them were from Monroe Projects. I was from the first Mitchell Lama Rosedale Gardens, and my other friend was from Leland Houses. Deetra, also an African-American female, she scored the highest grade on the specialized admissions test. She scored a 165. Imagine, had my mother not advocated, which is what I'm doing today, for all the children to have those same opportunities that we had. During that time, there were similar test preparations were offered in some of the other public middle schools, either before or after school. I know some other alumni that were African American. In Harlem, I think it was Philip Randolph, they said that they had classes where they, if they wanted to have preparation for the test, they could have gone free of charge. Therefore, if all middle schools were offered the same opportunity to participate in test preparation for specialized high school in their schools, more underrepresented students would not only apply, but pass the exam today. In addition, this would naturally increase racial and cultural diversity in specialized high schools. Unfortunately, parents today have had to look elsewhere for test preparation that could have occurred in their child's school. Currently, many elementary and middle schools offer test preparation class during the mornings for the New York State ELA and math assessment. That is the same kind of preparation that could be afforded in every middle school for specialized high school admissions testing. I am a teacher. Teachers get paid per session to come in early and offer instruction. It is not an unusual thing for teachers to come in early and provide test preparation. Why not do the same thing for the specialized high school exams, make an investment in our students? If this happened in my school in the Bronx, it can be duplicated throughout the city to better prepare all students. Tragically, the larger issue beyond test preparation is the absence of education equity in our public school system. As stated earlier, 4 students from my middle school located in a larger African American and Hispanic community passed the test and attended science. In stark contrast, 91 students from another middle school in the Riverdale section of the Bronx, largely not African American and Hispanics, applied, passed the test, and attended science. And how I know that? When I got to science, I ran into an Asian friend where we started elementary school together, PS 100. Then for middle school, she moved out the neighborhood to Riverdale. We met again when we got to science. When I told her how many, came from our school, she said, oh, 91 came from mine. Why is the quality of education presented, as well as the accessibility of educational information, vary according to a school's location? In other words, why does it seem that education differs according to the community and access to information and opportunities be dependent on a student's zip code? Parents seemingly are better informed about the choices available in certain communities opposed to others, as well as actively encouraged to take advantage of those educational opportunities. Many parents in diverse, underrepresented communities may not be fully informed of the specialized school options or the process. Neither are the students well informed to the point of excitement and application. Even as an informed, active, savvy, and involved parent, when I attended the high school fairs with my twin sons, it was overwhelming and confusing. As I looked at the faces of the other parents, I could see the anxiety and perplexed look reflected over and over as we rushed to each room. Parents may need more than a limited time high school fair to fully understand the various choices, respective programs, deadlines, and the first choice, second choice, third choice ramifications for their children. Therefore, with increased active recruitment for and by specialized high schools, especially in the underrepresented communities, coupled with increased access to comprehensible information and educational opportunities, more underrepresented students would apply and attend specialized high schools. In conclusion, achieving diversity, education equity, and increased application by students racially underrepresented in specialized school requires more than an elimination of any test. This is especially true with the reality of extreme vigor and competition inherent within specialized high schools, of which I know firsthand. Consequently, increased diversity and representation in specialized high schools requires a commitment to make the necessary educational perceptions, paradigms, and policy changes by decision makers that trickle down through the local schools to the underrepresented students and their families, despite economic and other factors. These solutions and others that increase informational access, education equity, and equal opportunity for all New York City public students will increase representation in high schools and beyond, and is worthy of consideration. I have just a few possible solutions that may help not just the elimination of the test, but things that are more long-lasting and will be more than just a Band-Aid on the problem.
Succinctly, Ms. George.
Okay. Oh, mandatory specialized high school testing for 7th grade students citywide and 8th grade, where parents have the option to opt out. That's it. Not just a few people taking the test, but every 8th grader taking the test, preparing the children in the 7th grade, because we could be missing diamonds in the rough. Provide active, specialized high school recruitment in each middle school for 7th and 8th grade parents and students conducted by the 9 specialized high school guidance counselors, accompanied by their school's parent coordinators, student representatives, and parent representatives, so that we can have a more comprehensive understanding of what specialized high school and the testing is all about.
Ms. George, maybe just the top 3.
Huh?
Maybe just the top 3.
All right, let me just read the last thing. In general, the mayor's proposal is insufficient and inadequate to address the needs of the underrepresented and underserved communities. The numbers, the numbers of academic and informational means is limited to impoverished community, and with all of these changes, this can change. There is hope, but we must act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. George. James Berry. James Berry is up, to be followed by Jonathan Halabi and Carlos Perez Valle. Hello, Ms. Berry. Mr. Berry.
My computer fried today, so I'll email it to you.
Okay. Yes.
Good evening. My name is James Scott Berry, and I am from Queens. I actually graduated with my 2nd master's degree right here at Lehman College. Well, actually, it was out on the lawn. My middle daughter graduated here also from Celia Cruz Bronx High School of Music, specialized school. Very grateful for that. And my other 2 daughters also graduated, one from Frank Sinatra School of the Arts, and the other one from Juilliard, well, actually the pre-college program, but then she was homeschooled. In any event, my father, I grew up in the South, in Atlanta, and my father's favorite person in all of America was Martin Luther King Jr., who we all know said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content. But by the content of the character. What the mayor is proposing is not progressive. It is horrifically regressive. Now he seems to want to judge all of our students by the color of their skin and not by the content of their character and their hard work and their study habits. In my opinion, education is a big thing to me. I've actually written a paper on how to solve education, and I think I can. I'd love to debate some people with that. In my opinion, there's only one major difference between failing schools and successful schools. And I challenge you with this. Please contact me if you disagree. The only major difference between a failing school and a successful school is teacher authority in the classroom. My father taught me, he used to say this over and over. I never understood why he kept repeating it, but I'm glad he did. He said, every organization is doomed to failure. Your business, your bank, your politics, your church, your school. Every organization is doomed to failure if you do one thing. And no matter how much money you put into it, no matter how good of people you hire, no matter what kind of great innovative programs you come up with, your organization will guaranteed fail. If you give people responsibility without giving them the authority to carry out their responsibility. Why are we sending our teachers, so many of them, not in every situation, but in the inner city schools, in the troubled schools, we are sending gleefully our teachers to work in hell? I taught at a school here in New York City. We had a 37% graduation rate, and that was good. I was asked to cheat for the students, to pass them. I was attacked 3 times in 1 year. There were many teachers that were attacked. None of us reported it because we knew it wasn't going to be reported. And the students would just get more angry, and then they would put them back in our classroom 3 days or a week later.
Mr. Berry, we want witty testimony.
What's that?
Witty testimony. Brevity is the soul of wit.
Witty.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
So,
1 more minute, please.
Well, excuse me. So what I'm suggesting is that we need to address the major problem. This is not, I have friends in many, many countries all over the world. And going back to the speaker before, who said that America's education rate was around, 40 to 28 to 40, the varying rates, right?
I believe he said 40th.
Among the nations, my unofficial study, out of 196 nations, is that we are 195 or 196 in student behavior. So I just ask you, how is it possible that in the greatest city in the world and the greatest country in the world, we have the worst violent, disrespectful student rate in all of the world, or near the bottom? How is that possible? If you want to fix education and we keep ignoring this, we'll be back here in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. You will never solve the problem. But you can solve the problem not by taking tests away to encourage those that are very, very gifted. Listen, my brother, let me just tell this, okay? My brother said when he was a senior, I said, where are you going to college? He said, I'm not going to college. I said, what do you mean you're not going to college? He said, I don't want to go to college. I'll do this. He said, I'm a classical musician. He's a country musician. He said, I'll do this or I'll starve to death. I said, man, you're crazy. You got to have a backup. Today, he makes about 30 to 40 times more money than I make. And he never went to college. We can't make college the goal of every student. That's pure stupidity. We have to encourage students where they are. We have to help them. We have to encourage them. We have to tell them that they are worthy. If they never go to college, they're worthy, pursuing their heart's desire, and we need to make that available for them, open to them, and do not let other students come in that classroom for 2 days in a row and disrupt that teacher and disrupt the other students' rights to be educated. What are we doing? Why are we sending our teachers to hell? Why are we making our teachers obedient to students? All my friends in New York City, you know what they say? Our students in 4th grade, in 5th grade, play us. They play us and laugh at us because they know we don't have authority.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Thank you.
Thank you. So, to your point about teachers, to your point,
5 minutes.
To your point about students, teachers in hell, some of these students may live in a personal hell of their own, where they are not eating. They have substandard education. They have substandard qualities at home. So before we start talking about students being into hell, we need to look at the whole child, and before we start judging specific situations contextually. We can have the conversation offline, sir. Thank you, sir.
Do you have a plan
Thank you.
for that?
Jonathan Halabi,
You're going to preach at me?
followed by Carlos Perez Valle and Kevork Krimian.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mic is always weird for me. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Hollaby. I'm a teacher here at the High School of American Studies at Lehman College. I'm here on this campus. Also, before I start, just a thank you to Senator Lieu and a sort of, I don't know you, but a belated congratulations on what I thought was a very important victory. Having you win that seat for the state Senate was a very good thing for all of us, I think. And a thank you to my state senator, Jamaal Bailey, both for having me here and for having an extended discussion about this topic last summer. I really appreciate your time. Thank you. I've lived in District 10. I've lived in the Bronx for 30 years. I'm never a New Yorker because I didn't come from, but I've lived in the Bronx for 30 years. In this district, I was a founding teacher at the High School of American Studies since it started, and before that I taught at Columbus in the East Bronx. Some of you know Columbus. And I want to talk a little bit about the history of our school, because I saw it. We started in 2002, and we were an integrated school. We were about 25% white, black, Hispanic, Asian. And we saw that change. And at the beginning, districts 10 and 11 in particular, and so Senator Bailey, our district, was really well represented in our school. And we watched over time as those students stopped getting in. And so the schools that we're familiar with, 180 and 181, 89, 83, I think, is out of district, and some of the ones in District 10, we watched the numbers fall. And, well, let me stop for a second. My colleague, I had a colleague who was lucky, I think fortunate for us, we had 2 speakers from American Studies. Morgan Ellenson talked about needing to fix the whole system, that it's not just a specialized high school issue, and that kids learn better in an integrated setting, and that it's possible and it's necessary to find a plan to integrate all of our schools from K through 12. And students learn better in integrated setting, and I've seen it, because I taught in what was once an integrated school. It's not anymore, right? It's a majority white school. We have majority coming from one group. That changed. And if we had a plan to fix the whole system, I'd be on it. If there are people who are going to work on that, I'd like to be part of that. I think that's a really important thing. But I don't think that takes away our obligation from addressing a highly symbolic and very prominent problem, which is the specialized high schools. I don't think that the students in District 10, that the children of the children who were getting in 20 years ago are suddenly, and I'm going to use a bad word, stupider than their parents, that they're less intelligent, that they're less engaged. Something bad has happened. Somebody didn't sprinkle magic dust over District 11 and say, you're not good enough anymore to get into a specialized high school. Where'd they go? What happened? And I hear really heartfelt stories from alumni, not only here and other places. I read a lot about it. It affects me in my school, about how things used to be. And I think that as well-meaning as those stories are, something is different today. This is a different circumstance. The ratio 91 to 4, somebody shared 91 kids from one school and 4 from another, is far worse today than that, not better. And by the way, the school that you're referring to with the 91 is no longer near the top of that heap, right? The difference between the haves and the have-nots has become huge. And anyway, I've seen how our students learn better together, and we have, and somebody references, a discovery program. This is it's not just us, every specialized high school has it. We have students who did not make the cut. In our case, the students are about 50 points below. It's not just a point or two, about 50 points below the cut. And in our classrooms, we can't tell who's who unless somebody tells us that a student who's particularly hardworking, who comes from 180 or 181 or 83 or 118.
Mr. Hollaby, just one more minute.
Sure. Even if their score was 50 points below, fits right into our school. That the hard work and the intelligence somehow come through. That's strong evidence that if we took top kids from every middle school, that we would do well. The mayor's plan, the chancellor's plan, is one attempt to address this. If there were others, we might want to talk about them instead. But if there's only plans to fix what's happening to District 11 10 years from now, I'm going to say that that's not a plan to address our problem in specialized high schools. That's a problem to push it off. That we need something that does, and if it's not going to be the chancellor's plan, something that has effect now, not way down the line. And that's my point. And I think that's, as members of the State Senate, the chair of the Education Committee, is that correct?
New York City Education.
New York City Education Committee and member of the committee, that also falls on you. And together, I guess it's not modest of me to say myself, but with other education advocates and well-meaning advocates and yourselves, we should be able to come up with something that takes care of this, that addresses this issue, not a generation down the road, but today.
Thank you,
very much.
Mr. Hollaby. Carlos Perez Valle. On deck is Kevork Kremian and Joan Cargill.
Good evening, everybody, state senators, community members. My name is Carlos Perez Valle. If you can't pronounce that, that's fine. You can say Carlos instead. I'm currently a student right here at Macaulay Honors College at Lehman, majoring in speech pathology and minoring in early childhood education. Actually, one of my professors is Eric Joya. He sends his regards. He's my policy professor, so he was like, say hi to John if he's there. You are here. I'm an immigrant who was born in Mexico, not Mexico, but raised right here in the Boogie Down, not that far from here. Two of my grandparents were some of the first folks from Mexico to settle in the Big Apple back in the 1960s. That is to say, I come from a legacy of trailblazers and pioneers. I embodied that pioneering spirit when it came to my education. I'm the first in my family to graduate from elementary school, middle school, high school, and soon college. However, none of that would have been possible had it not been for the teachers that I had growing up as a New York City public school student. I was part of that roughly 21% of Black and Latinx students who went to a gifted and talented school program. And even though, and I say this because even though we're only 21% in those programs, we make up 70% of almost 70% of the school body as a whole. And how I did that, I still don't really know. I know I have smarts. As human beings, we all have the software needed to do rigorous work and develop our metacognitive skills. But looking back, I sometimes think it was sheer luck that life put in my path teachers who cared and empowered me and who held my hand, as well as my parents' hands, as we learned about how to apply and enroll into these trophy programs. Had it not been for my former teachers and the access to information and preparation that they gave my family, I think my life would be drastically different today. My teachers did not just give me access to a gifted and talented program. They gave me access to critical thinking skills, soft skills that to this day I use in the workforce, pride in my ethnic identity, a call to pluralism and social justice, and a refuge from all the stressors of growing up in a low-income immigrant household right here in the Bronx. Unfortunately, Because of many factors of societal dissonance and oppression, my parents were not able to give me those skills. My dad, he never even went to school because he was too poor back in his home country. Instead, they entrusted my teachers to give me all the things that they wish they could have given to me, and gave me, they did. However, as I mentioned before, I was one of the lucky few. Most students who look like me, who have similar ethnographic and socioeconomic backgrounds such as me, are often barred from entering into academically rigorous programs. Today, we convene to discuss access to these kinds of educational opportunities. Mind you, I ended up becoming a scholarship kid at a private high school. But it hurts me that rather than discussing how we are going to increase the number of opportunities to well-rounded education programs, some of us want to boast about maintaining the systemic barriers that have historically barred underserved students from entering schools that will prepare them to become self-sufficient learners. I pose to you these questions, to everybody here these questions. If we have a model that works, such as the specialized high schools, why do we not take this model and replicate it among all New York City public high schools? Why don't we prepare all students to enter into and succeed in these educational spaces? We have created the concept and construct of an elite education, and in doing that, we perpetuate the systemic inequities. The real question we should be debating, in my opinion, is not whether or not we should keep the test. We should be asking ourselves, why not every high school in New York City is a specialized high school? Or why not every grammar school is a gifted and talented program that would feed students into these specialized programs? Even if we had a more equitable admissions process into the specialized high schools, even if we give more Black and Latinx students more test prep, we still have a limited number of seats in these specialized schools. The demand for these seats exceeds the supply. That's something that Eric taught me. Why, and since—
Eric's telling you have 1 more minute.
Yeah, I'm already done. And since we have created a scarcity complex, we are pinning ourselves against each other rather than working together towards providing more holistic, inclusive, and responsive opportunities for all of New York City's children. So do we debate this unfair test, or rather do we learn from this mistake and work together to get all schools up to par and get all students, regardless of their background, to become self-sufficient learners? Or do we continue with the perpetuation of educational inequity and continue oppressing future generations of New Yorkers? Thank you.
Thank you. Kavor Krimian, followed by Joan Cargill and Jeffrey Young.
Hello, my name is Kavor Krimian. I live in Queens. I have 2 daughters who went through the specialized high school system. One graduated from Stuyvesant 2 years ago. The other is graduating from Bronx Science right now. I took the test in 1975, and I didn't get in to any of the schools. But my daughters sure hit the cover off the ball. So, and for the last 6 years, I've been in and out of these. I volunteer all the time. I'm semi-retired, and I spend a lot of time in these schools. And I agree with my friend who said the racial diversity in these schools is dismal. I agree with this, sincerely agree with this. As a New Yorker, as a public school kid, I wholeheartedly agree with this. But blaming the SHSAT, which I never did when I didn't do well, is not the problem. It's a red herring, it's pandering, and it's not going to fix anything. And the proof of this is just looking at the selective schools, Townsend Harris, Beacon, Bard. It's only slightly less dismal in these schools, and they don't have the SHSAT. The problem is the pipeline that feeds these schools and the lack of information that's available to everybody. My wife made it a full-time job. She was a stay-at-home mom when our kids were getting ready for GNT. Just to figure out that we're zoned for PS 49, the test for GNT was in PS 87, and the actual program was in PS 153, took weeks to figure out. And this is a woman with 2 masters, with plenty of time, and it still took her weeks to figure this out. This is where the problem is. I volunteer at fairs all the time, school fairs, I can see the dismal disparity in the information that's out there. There are parents who come with specific, detailed questions, and then there are parents who really want the best for their kids, just like any other parent, but they just don't have the information. We have to provide the information. We have to broaden the access to GNTs. And we also have to broaden the number of the GNTs. That is the pipeline that feeds these schools. Look, these schools do something right. 12 graduates from these schools have won the Nobel Prize in chemistry and physics. 12 out of about 550 ever who won Nobel Prizes in math and physics, in chemistry and physics. My statistician friend will say, this is a statistical freak show. This is like hitting 300, batting 300 30 years in a row. It doesn't happen. Yet these schools are pulling it off. So let's not undermine them. Let's make them better. Let's broaden access to these schools. We settled in New York for these schools. Both my wife and I served overseas. Although I'm a New Yorker, she's a Californian. We had all sorts of choice to return to. She wanted to go back to California. I convinced her to come back to Queens for the schools, and she thanks me every day. And I had a 25-year on Wall Street, paid a lot of taxes for the benefit of the city, but also benefited from this city myself. Look, I've seen our adversaries. We've served this country all over the world.
One more minute, Mr. Cremian.
Yeah, we know our adversaries. They're not looking at this as democracy in action. They're looking at this as mushy-brained Americans shooting themselves on the foot. We have to, it's awful, it's dismal, like my friend said. We got to look for real solutions, not political pandering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cremian. Joan Cargill, followed by Jeffrey Young and Jaden Wu.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm going to be brief because I think everyone here in this room touched on a piece of all the things I wanted to say, and I don't need to say them. My name is Joan P. Cargill, class of 1985, Bronx Science. Yes, and I really, really want to stress and say, I truly believe each of us are here because of inspiration, and being inspired, and the lack of it, and the need to bring it back. When I was 9 years old, a little girl on my block on Tilden Street in the Bronx said, my cousin got into the Bronx High School of Science. 9 years old. I'm a child of immigrants from Jamaica, and I didn't know what Bronx High School of Science was, but I tell you what, it touched on the spark. It touched a spark in me. And you touched on something about mandatory, and different things were bouncing around that are the genesis of just what I want to impart in seconds. We may not catch everyone. We may not be able to teach everyone. But the way we know the music and Supreme and Barack's posters on the wall in the churches, and the way we can disseminate information, there's something amazing that happens for that one or two kids walking down the hall that sees Shashat and goes, what's that? What's that? There's no posters in some of the schools I taught in 2 years ago that even talk about, there's nothing going on. My son is in school in Chinatown, in high school, and he says, Mommy, on Saturdays, there's these groups of kids who meet every Saturday to prep for the test. So it's not group against group, it's energy against energy. And my friends, none of my friends' kids took the test for Bronx Science or the schools. We've gone to private schools. They've moved out to other boroughs. We haven't repopulated. Maybe we don't have to. Maybe that's the gift of having gone to Bronx Science. Bronx Science was a gift to me. The test can't go away Because the society we're living in right now, where everyone gets a trophy, all I had was the test. My parents had no money. It was the competitiveness I needed as a girl with parents who worked all the time. It was my way to break out, and I met kids and traveled, and to this day, I've done all this hard work. I'm 52 years old, and all the interviewer wants to know is, you went to Bronx Science? So there is something valuable in having the test and having it remain. There's something interesting going on. When I did the high school fair with my son, and a few of you touched on it, there is a confusion that is happening to dissuade kids who are very bright to get lost in things that might be good or might be subpar because it's so confusing. You don't have the energy of the time to figure out the good things. So I just say that to say I am a product of the competitiveness. I was the only person at Our Savior Lutheran who passed the test and got into Bronx Science. Other kids went to Discovery Program. My cousin was one of the first African-American students admitted to Brooklyn Tech. And I just say the through line is the need to want to succeed, and our kids in the charter schools, if you see these images around you, you might not get them all, but you will infect them one at a time, and we will take more tests. More of us will take the tests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cargill. Jeffrey Young, followed by Jaden Wu and Helen Yu.
Good morning. Good evening. As you can see, I'm not like most of you here. I'm a child. I'm trying to get to the SHSAT. I'm in 6th grade, Nathaniel Hawthorne Middle School, and like many other Asians by myself, I really want to get in the SHSAT, but Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Carranza are trying to stop it. My name is Jeffrey, and I'm a 6th grader. Let's put the mayor and chancellor's racism aside, and let's face the reality in an honest way. Let's also talk about this difficult issue in an intelligent way, because our goal is to solve problems, but not to create further divisions emotionally and performance-wise. The performance gaps between whites and Asian Americans and blacks and Hispanics are not just in schools in NYC. As pointed out by Glenn Lurie, a famous scholar at Brown University, the National Assessment of Educational Progress reported that 0% of 12th grade black and Hispanic students perform at the advanced level of math, and less than 2% of 12th grade black and Hispanic students at the advanced level for ELA. 0% and 2%. Whose fault is this? Should we blame the SHSAT of New York City for this national failure? Obviously, we should not. My parents told me that every problem has a solution, but the first step to solve the problem is to find the root of the problem. Treating people differently based on their color of skin is not the way to solve the problems. That's racism. This is not the type of America presidents like Abraham Lincoln expected us to build at all. Racism can never be accepted, no matter who and which race group it is targeting. For me, I love basketball, math, science, and music, and I've tried my best to improve at all four. You probably have noticed that currently 74.4% of NBA players are black, and only 0.2% are Asian players. I practice basketball as much as I can. If one day, if I'm drafted by the NBA, I hope it is not because of racial quotas to fix lack of diversity, but because of my basketball skills. NBA player Stephen Curry practices shooting about 1,000 times a day. We all have to work hard if we want to achieve our dreams. True equality can only be achieved if we are all judged by our characters and not by the color of our skin. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Jaden Wu, followed by Helen Yu and John Roberts.
Hi, my name is Jaden Wu, and I am also a 6th grader from Nathaniel Hawthorne Middle School. Like many students at my school, I love math, science, and many other activities inside and outside of schools. My goal is to attend Stuyvesant or Bronx Science. However, Mayor de Blasio's proposal of getting rid of the SHSAT will affect many diligent Asian American students like me. I want to ask Mr. de Blasio and Mr. Carranza why we, as students, have to be judged based on our color of skin. Where is the liberty and justice for all as stated in our Pledge of Allegiance? I have some more questions for Mr. de Blasio and Mr. Carranza. Why are you so upset about the fact that we have so many Asian and white students who are talented and passionate about science and technology and are capable of earning their seats at the specialized high schools? Shouldn't you be grateful about it? You could ask for our help and we will help each other. Many schools have tutoring programs already. I am curious about what's the mayor's and chancellor's plan for the rest of the 93% students, especially those Black and Hispanic students who are far below their grade levels in math and ELA. Shouldn't you worry more about those failing students? Bronx Science has produced the most number of Nobel Prize winners. I admire all those Nobel Prize winners in chemistry, physics, medicine, and economics. They have made a huge contribution to our lives today. If we take out the SHSAT, how can we grow the next generation of scientists who will make groundbreaking advancements to improve technology, fight cancers, and discover new laws of the universe? To Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Carranza, have you asked the Hispanic and Black students whether they prefer to earn their admission with their own diligence or they prefer to enter the specialized high school via your patronization? Any student with self-respect and dignity will prefer to earn their own seats and not want to attend a school because of their race. Why are we still treating people differently based on the color of skin? As a citizen of New York City, I request you not penalize the hardworking Asian students and leave the SHSAT alone for a better future of the city and the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaden. Helen Yu, followed by John Roberts and David Rem. By the way, if you have prepared your written testimony, you can certainly email it to us as well. So feel free.
Thank you, Senator Liu, and thank you, Senator Bailey. I really appreciate this opportunity because, as one speaker has mentioned, during last Friday's public hearing, Chancellor Carranza said, no matter what the public opinion, Asians' opinion is, the result will be the same. So that's to say, Mr. Carranza does not care about what New Yorkers say or think. So Josh Wallach, the Deputy Chancellor of the DOE, reported during the same public hearing that this administration has invested $23 million on increasing diversity in specialized high schools. But so far, nothing has changed. And in my opinion, this is because they're focusing on the wrong thing. Ladies and gentlemen, 23 million taxpayers' dollars, but zero outcomes. What does that say? It only says one thing, that is, Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Carranza are incompetent. They're only capable of wasting taxpayers' money. Of course, lack of diversity is a problem. It's a huge problem, but SHSAT is not the problem. SHSAT has offered us the opportunity to discover how bad the elementary and middle schools in the Black and Hispanic, in some Black and Hispanic communities are. Everyone should be aware by now how bad these schools are, and we have to collectively figure out a way to improve them. There are many good ideas from all the smart people in this room, and please, to Mayor de Blasio and the Chancellor Carranza, please listen to all the ideas here. And we all know by now that the mayor's office has a first-hand study showing that SHSAT is the best predictor of student success in high schools, but they are hiding the results from the general public. What kind of mayor and chancellor are they, trying so hard to cover their failure, but not to fix the problem effectively? If the mayor and the chancellor have any hearts or vision, they should see the danger of their proposal. They should see that their proposal will do more harm to the Black and Hispanic students. We never ever want to hear that people saying, oh, he gets to Stuyvesant because he's Black, or she gets to Bronx Science because he's Hispanic. No, we do not want to hear that. So please do not use racial quota, because racial quota is a superficial way to achieve equality. It does not fix any problems. It's fake equality. It's equality without dignity. And it's equality without quality. So Asian, Black, and Hispanic students are equally capable of learning when good learning habits are established early on. Look at many successful stories in the city. Look at success academies and many other such schools. So please don't discriminate the Asian by excluding us from the best science and math schools in New York City. And don't discriminate the Black and Hispanic by falsely believing that they're not able to learn to do better. And please, so last Friday, I was walking in Brooklyn, and in front of a restaurant, a teenager was crying, saying, "I'm hungry." And this is not right. A teenager sitting in front of a restaurant in the dark and crying, say, "I'm hungry." So right now, the mayor is doing the same thing. He cooks 7 hamburgers and watch 100 of our children fight for it. Every child needs a hamburger to grow, to be stronger. So build more specialized high schools and don't watch our children fight because of hunger.
Thank you. John Roberts, followed by David Rem and Cedric Fergus.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for tolerating such sacrificing your Friday evening.
It's not a sacrifice at all.
It's our job. Thank you very much. But like you guys, I went to Bronx Science and just wanted to relay a little bit. So I was not much of anything in middle school, and I was like flandering and nothing. Born and raised in New York. But when I got to Bronx Science, they put me right in these honors math programs. I think because of the test, they just put me straight in. The test was somewhat diagnostic in that particular case. So from there, I saw these other classmates that were doing amazing things. You probably saw it too. And I think this is what kept me out of Harris Field for the most part. Anyway, but I'll tell you later.
You got to go to Bronx Science to understand
right.
that.
But what I do want to say is that the peer effects are tremendous, and we have to preserve this. STEM education is critical. Secondly, and I'll be quick, accountability. We really need accountability, and we need to see if there's a problem in education, we have to see it. And the tests, standardized tests, reveal and expose these issues, and we can't solve any problems without being able to judge what kids are learning. And so we need tests. And grades just don't do this. Grades are full of all kinds of, like, are you the teacher's pet, likability, things like that. And they can be polluted with many different teachers have different subjective views of the same kid, et cetera, et cetera. So grades, please stay away from grades. We need tests for accountability, to see the problems, what are kids learning, how to compare kids across different schools. We need tests to do that. LaShawn Robinson, I think, testified at the assembly hearing. The city spent, DOE spent $23 million trying to address implicit biases that teachers and DOE employees have. And so this also tells you that grades, this can be polluting grades. So tests are more important. Finally, a solution, just a little thing. What about we hire 1,000, recruit 1,000 new teachers in underperforming grades 3 to 8 schools? 1,000, and I'd focus on math. I'd use the math GRE, and only, and you have to pay them more money because in low achieving schools, they really need more supports besides just the regular run-of-the-mill education. So I would recommend we hire and spend a lot of money, but it's worth it, hiring 1,000 new good teachers. And I'll end right there.
Thank you, John. Send me an email about how we get another $100 million. All right.
It's worth it.
I was just kidding.
We need a massive investment in our crumbling educational infrastructure.
Thank you. David Rem, followed by Cedric Fergus and Bertha Fertil.
I personally met with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at Albany's Capitol, son of our assassinated Democratic Senator Robert F. Kennedy. Kennedy recounted to me his father's important and fitting for our discussion quote, "People in power lie." These 4 words are 100% representative of the lies that are spewed out of de Blasio's, Carranza's mouths. Lie number 1, the SHSAT test is not a valid test because it is not aligned with the Common Core curriculum. The SHSAT test has, in fact, been validated by a formal 2013 study commissioned at de Blasio's request, yet kept secret for 5 years, and in 2017 was yet redesigned to be completely aligned with New York's Common Core curriculum, taught to all of our public school children every single day. The SHSAT study found, and I quote, "a strong positive predictive relationship with school achievement during the first 2 years of high school measured by grades, scores on advanced placements tests, and Regents exams," end of quote. Yet still, the majority of Black and Hispanic children cannot even meet the minimum required SHSAT scores to gain entry into any of the 8 specialized high schools. And they score equally as poor on the New York State math and ELA exams, with a majority students scoring subpar scores, not even grade level. So why can't they score high enough? Let me be very clear here. Black Hispanic kids didn't all of a sudden get dumb because they aren't dumb. To the contrary, as clearly evidenced by Brooklyn Tech's 2,000 Black children and some 500 to 1,000 Hispanic children in tech, 75% majority during the 70s and 80s. Today's Black and Hispanic children cannot score high enough on the SHSAT and the New York State scores because they have been done a horrendous miscarriage of justice and been failed by past and present mayors, chancellors, boards of education, and politicians by their removing of the special programs, gifted and talented programs. All New Yorkers should be outraged at this feeble attempt in blaming the SHAT test as a scapegoat. De Blasio, Carranza want to eliminate the SHAT test and put in its place principal recommendations, subjective school grades, projects, etc. This should never be permitted. An A in one school is the equivalent of a B or a C in another. Another case right on point is Carranza's top deputy, Cheryl Watson Harris, who swindled her children into the 2 of the most selective and desirable middle schools, even after the application procedure had ended. I call on Carranza to fire Cheryl Watson Harris. After all, what example does this give all New Yorkers? I want to personally thank newly appointed Jumaane Williams, New York City's public advocate, who, unlike Assemblyman Charles Barron, represents all New York City's children. Barron chided Williams by saying, and I quote, "You should be ashamed of yourself for not siding with us," in quotation marks, or Blacks, meaning Blacks, with respect to eliminating the SHAT exam. This is a racist statement. Mr. Williams stood tall to Barron and responded, quote, "Unlike yourself, I represent all New York City children." I have the video exchange on my phone if anyone is interested in seeing. Mr. Williams could have echoed de Blasio's by taking the easy tack of just blaming the SHAT test. Instead, he's telling the truth. Justice requires overhauling the whole city education system. Scraping the test is a dodge. I think Ms. Mona Davids, another Black woman of color and president of New York City's Parents Union, best summed up de Blasio's, Carranza's blatant racist policies when she stated, and I quote, "Because de Blasio and Carranza have such racist low expectations for Black and Hispanic students, they feel they have to lower the standards for our children. They are the racists," said Ms. Davids, who again is Black. Ms. Davids continued, and I again quote her remarks, word for word here. "Carranza is attempting to use a race card to cover up the failure of New York City's K-12 school system. We have hundreds of thousands of high school students who are not reading, writing, and doing math at grade level, and that is criminal." End of quote. In closing, I am sick and disgusted of hearing Carranza propose racist policy, which predominantly says to Asian and white children that because of their born skin color, something they could never change, they don't deserve to go to the very best 8 specialized high schools. Carranza's blatant racist policies implies that if you're white, you're bad, and if you're Asian, you're even worse. And now we have de Blasio going out to Iowa and abandoning the city for 2 years. It's unbelievable. Keep the SHSAT test. It is not the solution. Fix the schools. I have many proposals to fix the schools, and the main ones are we need to add gifted and talented programs, bring back the special programs, add free SHSAT prep for all New York City kids. I don't care what color you are.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. But please, please, everybody in New York City wants action. We don't want lip service. Please, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Rem. Cedric Fergus, to be followed by Bertha Fertile and Liling something. Okay.
Test. Hello?
It's on.
Hello?
Yeah, it's on. It's on. Just use this one.
Thank you. Hello. All right. Yeah, thank you, Mr. John Liu and Jamaal for being here, both senators and both very good, fair people, too. I met both of you personally years ago. I'm a retired teacher, 20 years in the system. I did not pass the test to go to Bronx Science, but I did go to Clinton High School. Oh! But I had many friends of mine who went to Bronx Science, and the biggest problem is the systems is not the tests. The system is very bad, and it's bad for most of the kids in the schools. Listen, I'll be for real. My kids did not go to public school in New York City. They went to Catholic school. So most of the Hispanic and black parents who are middle class send their kids to private schools, Catholic schools, and charter schools. So you have to try to get those kids to stay in the public schools. But like somebody said, in junior high school, they start leaving the school system. My kids, I didn't even barter. I just send my kids to Catholic schools from kindergarten until we move out the city to Charlotte. Okay? You're losing a lot of good parents and kids. It's not the test, it's the system. I worked 20 years in District 9 as a teacher. Rough district, the kids are very, very smart. The kids are great. Is this how you teach the kids? It's what's not there. There's no gifted programs. I have a good friend of mine, my wife's right there too. He went to gifted programs in District 9. It's not there no more. He went to Middlebury College. He went back to teach. A lot of his friends from that program are doctors working Wall Street. These kids come from the South Bronx. And when I went to school in Sousa, we had an SP program. And a lot of kids skipped from 7th to 9th grade, and a lot of them went to the specialized high schools. In my own class, 4 kids went to special high schools. Okay? It wasn't a big deal back in the day. The parents, demand you to go to school, do the right thing. But the problem is the school system has went down the last 20 years. Okay? I still involved with education now, even though I'm retired. And so much the problem with the kids are smart. It's how you teach the kids. They don't teach thank you. They don't teach kids anymore how to think. Okay, thank you. They don't teach the kids how to think anymore. Critical thinking anymore. That's the problem. So many times I have to teach the kids, help them teach them with math, they can understand how to solve the problem. I got them to think. I even use some of the present day issues to deal with them to learn how to do math. The bottom line is this, since I have about 30 seconds. The test is not the problem. The school system is the problem. Majority of students go to schools are not getting good, fair education, period. And this fixed the system. Everything else is a smoke screen. I'm still involved in the system with the kids. I just came from a basketball game, and my kids are starting to more and more get what I'm trying to teach them. I don't really teach them how to think. Not even play basketball, how to think. And they started to say, well, Mr. Fergus, thank you for giving me this material that I gave to them about this thick long to help them at home to learn about basketball. But it's about the vocabulary, the problem solving, critical thinking.
Thank you.
I'm trying to teach them. So that's what the issue really is.
Thank you,
Don't
Mr.
believe me
Fergus.
yet. No problem.
Bertha Fertile, followed by Lai Ling and Vincent Liu.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, good evening. Sorry, good evening.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, the both of you, for being here. Especially thank you, Senator Bailey, for explaining that kids come with packages.
Hold the.
I'm sorry. I want to thank Senator Bailey for explaining to one of the presenters that children come with a whole entire package, that you have to understand that they come to the school already with issues. There are 4 things I would like to share. Is that the test, as everybody said, it's not the test. There's nothing wrong with the test. And as we move forward, you will understand that taking the test is not an issue. It's what happens in between the test and you preparing for it. One of the things that's been happening is that people who are able to get through the test, they've been practicing this test for years. And by the time that a Black or Hispanic child comes to the test, it's like the first time. And a lot of them are looking at this like, oh my God, what are they saying? And so if you've been taught on how to take this test, then lo and behold, you're in these special schools. But if this is your first month that you've been looking at this, already it's an equity. And so as a result, yes, you're not going to win. And so there are 4 things that happens during this education process. There's creaming. There are some kids who, no matter whatever was on this test, lo and behold, they pass. Because they are intelligently in a way that no matter you think you put in front of them, lo and behold, it happens. But there are some that needs to get through that process. There's equity and quality, and our kids, Black and Hispanic kids, aren't being able to get that equity that we've been talking about. And the number 3 is economics. There's an economics that we're not talking about during these tests. There are people who spend months being taught on how to take this test. And again, someone said, these kids after school, they go to a special school to practice this test. This doesn't happen to Black and Hispanic kids. And yes, we talk about these quick things in the morning at school. That does nothing. There's nothing. They won't be able to catch up. And until we deal with that, we're not really dealing with that. And last thing is accountability. As adults, if we're serious to taking care of these kids, we need to deal with the equity in order to make this happen. And so I would like everybody, thank you for listening to me. And I'd like to, again, thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you, Ms. Fertile. Lai Ling, come on down, followed by Vincent Liu and Miao Na Zhang.
Does it work? Hello?
Yes, it works.
I'm testing. To make sure, I am a parent of Bowling Tech alumni who's currently attending Cooper Union. I never took the test, not because I didn't want to take CSAT. I was never told about CSAT, as well as many parents and other children. So why we blame the test who are held responsible for telling us? The school, who's held accountable for not informing the parents and the children, DOE. The test cannot make that decision, so why we blame the test? Right? Okay? Speaking of preparing for the test, if we were never told about the test, how can we prepare for it? I never prepared for it because I never knew it. When I knew it, it was too late. I was in high school already, John Dewey. So now, I heard many of you said many communities lacking gift program. Yes, they lack of gift programs, they lack of information, they lack of knowledge, they were never told of anything. So blaming the test is really scoping the test, scapegoating it. What?
It works.
Oh, it's in and out, so.
Loud and clear.
And while de Blasio wasted $730 million on a failed educational plan, can he save the money to give her more preparation for SheShack? I understand the DREAM program is offered for free of SheShack to low income. And the rich people of income have the means of ability to pay for the private tutoring school. Who gets screwed up in between? The middle income. The middle income always gets stuck. You're not up there to pay for it. You're not cheap enough to get for free. So what do we get? Why? Nothing. So I suggest NYC DOE should at least offer low-cost SheShack prep. Is it reasonable? At least give you guys a chance, rather than wasting $730 million on a failed educational plan by de Blasio. And recently, they want to spend $23 million on what? On teaching how to do bias? Look, it's within your brain. It's not called education. It's like buying you to do what they want, which is bribery. Okay? They want to spend $23 million on bribing the parents into saying whatever they want us to say. We are no puppets. All right? We are no drones. So why can't they spend $23 million on low-cost SheShack prep to those middle-income families? Isn't it more practical? Right? So, who should be fired? Not me. Corenza, right? Corenza cannot teach us. He's only here to spend our money. And where is de Blasio? I don't see him.
1 minute.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got 1 more minute. Because I don't see him, so I got 1 more minute. Maybe somewhere in Iowa. Why he was to get rid of the test while he's running for 2020 U.S. president? He was to please some parents into giving him some votes. Why should we vote for him to be the president when he cannot even run the city? Right? Yes, I think I'm good. I know.
Thank you. Thank you, Lily. Vincent Liu, followed by Miao-Na Zhang and Lisa Benton.
Testing. Good evening. My name is Vincent, a parent of two. We have here a lot of a comment about SHSAT, both in this forum and previous two forums. So before I get into the SHSAT subject, I would like to share what I have seen in the last public hearing in Brooklyn. I know that a lot of parents would like to say this, but I think I would like to take this opportunity to express my concern there. Because during the last hearing in Brooklyn, our two panelists took their position against racist mentality by criticizing a middle schooler who merely mentioned the word lazy with absolutely zero association with race. And it was called a dangerous mentality. And yet, we let an adult speaker openly smearing all Chinese American as cheater without a single denouncement from our panelists. I don't think that's appropriate. It really made me wonder, is racism against Asian American not considered racism? Thank you.
Comments like that are extremely offensive, and all it does is pitting one race against another, and we all should speak up to denounce. It's a very dangerous mentality because it's similar to the same racist mentality that fueled the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. Like almost all of our Asian parents, whose first-generation immigrants, we carefully craft our speech to make our point clear about this subject, SHSAT, while making sure not to be offensive. However, we still get such a racist response that call all of us cheater. Like what I said, that's not okay. With that all said, I would like to remind everyone here, including our panelists, we need to acknowledge the inappropriateness of that kind of a comments and racist mentality, cause racism against one race. It's racism against all race. Thank you. Now back to SHSST subject. We have problem in our education pipeline, so please stop scapegoating objective exam for the failure in our K-8. We need to focus on the root problem. If we continue to refuse to acknowledge the root problem, we'll never fix it. So please bring GNT program back to our poor communities, expand our specialized high school, and provide more resources to our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Miao Na Zhang, followed by Lisa Benton and Peng Zhan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited and a little bit nervous, like 'cause that's my first speech. I'm so happy here today. We had so many smart people here, because we know the tax is not the problem. The problem is just like our education system is a fail. My name is Milna. I'm the mother of 3 boys. My kids currently is attending the public school. My older son is the junior year in Brooklyn Tech. And his major is a civil engineer. He wants to be, he wants to be a civil engineer because he wants to serve the public. My second son is currently in his senior year in McTrin, and he be accepted by Stuyvesant. My youngest one is in the 5th grader, and he just accepted by the McTrin too. But at the year when he take the when he applied for the high school, if the bill passed, that he will have no chance to take the SHSAT. I don't want to argue whether the SHSAT is a good or bad, because I truly believe that the tax is not the problem. So why am I here to arguing here tonight about this? Every time when I heard people say they don't have money to send their kids for the for SHSAT, I just want to say there's like some free SHSAT program for the DOE offer, which is called the DREAM. My older son was in the program, and he helped him to, and the program helped him to get into Brooklyn Tech. And that's the offer for the low-income students. There are also another free prep class, such as the NIA, after-school program prep. When there is a will, there is a way. I was at both Queens and Brooklyn forum. After the hearing, I wonder why we are arguing over the skin color, but not for our kids, but not what our kid needs. We are on a long term. By arguing about the race and putting one group of people against another group. But that is what exactly our mayor wants to see. Why? Because when we focus on long things about the skin color, that help him to cover his failure in education. As a mayor, you should put all the New Yorker together, but he didn't. Another thing is when there are schools in the New York City, only had 2.1% of students passing the statewide math exam. Hold to a proposal that give out assist to top 7 of each middle school in the New York City to attend the specialized high school. It doesn't make sense. How can they survive in those schools if they don't even pass the statewide exam? Because I know my son, he in Brooklyn Tech for 3 years. He worked very hard for that, but he still had to catching up. So if you cannot even pass the statewide exam, how can you survive in those schools? Or we need to lower our standard later, again to save our politician face, because they fear those black and brown kids. It's not fair on all the kids, not only Asian American. When we are here busy fighting and arguing over fixing our broken public system, our mayor just announced that he's going to run for the next president. Seriously, he doesn't give a shit about our kid education and the mess he created here. I'm sorry for my the word. People, wake up. Don't let the politicians take control of our kids' education and their future. Let's face our education system. It's the real problem. What's the real problem now? Please keep the SHSAT, fix the K to A, so all the kids in the New York City have the equal opportunity to be success. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Benton, followed by Peng Zhan and Donghui Zhang.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Jamaal. Thank you, Mr. Liu, for having this conference for us today, that we could speak and express our opinions about what's going on in New York City public school system. My uncle, 1932, a child of sharecroppers from Savannah, Georgia, took the test for Stuyvesant High School. He passed. But, thank you very much, but they made him take the test twice because of racism. They could not believe a child of sharecroppers could pass the test. He took it twice, and he passed it twice. They had no choice. They had no choice but to let him attend. Yes. Yes. We have a problem in New York City, and it's not about this test. And if he could pass the test back in 1932, I know in 2019, kids of color can pass this test. We can. Parents, teachers, I'm going to tell you what the problem is. Back in 1985, okay, they didn't let teachers and parents collaborate together. They took away the PTA. So that made it seem that teachers could not tell parents about these tests to get your child prepared for these tests from elementary school. When I was going to elementary school, we learned from kindergarten about these high school exams. We were trained to think, as my husband said, to pass these exams. It should not be just one test. You should be able to pass any test that's given if you are taught how to think, how to interpret information that's given to you. For the Asian parents, I am so proud of you, because back in the 60s, you was down with everybody else, and they didn't want you. okay? They didn't want you. And I love your achievement that you have come up. You keep fighting for your kids. For the Black and Hispanic parents, we have to start fighting for our kids. We need to fix the system, the curriculum. I'm sorry, Mr. Liu, but the curriculum needs to be changed. They got to bring it back to how it was. And that is the problem. It is not the parents, okay? It is the curriculum and what is being taught. And every school deserves to have the same type of education. Not because you live in a certain neighborhood that they said, well, you know something? Those parents are not going to worry about it, so we're not going to give them what they need to educate their child. I thank you all for coming. I wish more people had come out. I'm a little disappointed, but for those of you who did, I thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep up the fight.
Thank you. Peng Zhan, to be followed by Donghui Zhang. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's so late now, so I'll be quick. My name is Peng. I'm a parent of District 26. My older daughter goes to Stevenson. She's a senior now. My younger one goes to middle school 67 in Queens. I choose to raise my kids in New York City because of our specialized high schools. I know if my kids work hard and study, they have a good chance to pass the SHSAC test and go to NYC specialized high schools. But one day, Mayor de Blasio said the system was unfair to certain minorities and must change. And the chancellor said it was systemic fraud and no single race should own the entrance exam. But wait, who owns the exam? No one can get in those schools if they do not study. The mayor's plan is to get the top 7% in every single middle school to enroll in the specialized high schools. This approach only conceals the real problem. We should not ignore the problems found in the schools that teach our children from kindergarten to 8th grade. Should the high-performing kids be penalized simply because they are doing good in their early years? A good number of the top 7% in some middle schools cannot even pass New York City statewide test. That's a fact. Sending those unprepared students to highly competitive specialized high schools will only set them up for failure. Being a big fish in a small pond may not be a bad idea for them, in my opinion. However, lowering the standards, lower the bar, will destroy our highly elite New York City special high schools. Yes, I support diversity, and I support SHSIT as the sole criteria. I recommend, as everybody else did, fix kindergarten to 8th grade, add more gifted and talented programs, and add more specialized high schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Donghui Zhang, you are up. And Mr. Zhang will close us out.
Okay, it's my honor. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Liu.
Bob Press, you want to speak? Okay. I guess Bob Press will close us out.
Okay, my name is Dong Hui, and I'm a parent of 2 students. All go to the New York City public school. So one in Stevenson and another one is an incoming freshman for Bronx Science. So they study, they pass the test, and they will further study, and then they learn more skills. In the future, they serve the country. So
Mr.
that's
Zhang,
how
use the mic so everyone can hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. So basically, let's let me comment on Mr. de Blasio and Mr. Carranza's criticism for the test. So the first criticism, they said, no other university or high schools use a single test as the criteria, sole criteria to enter the college or high school. Okay, so then let me ask. So first, I don't know whether that their statement is right or wrong. So at least I know many other countries just use single test, and they are very successful. There's nothing wrong. And second, let's say, okay, even if that's true, no other university or high school in United States use one test as single criteria. Then since we are talking about the diversity, if there are, let's say, 10,000 or 20,000 schools using multiple criteria as admission steps, as admission procedures, then what's wrong that for only 8 schools keep their condition, keep their tradition, using the single test as the criteria, as the sole criteria? What's wrong? Doesn't that also resemble some kind of diversity? Yeah, and since they have been so successful, why do we want to change that? That's also some diversity, right? And second, they criticized, they said the test is not in line with the Common Core or with whatever the kids have been learning. Then let me ask, who makes the test? Who designed the test? The DOE designed the test. If that's true, then why not you design the test in a way that is in alignment with what the kids have been learning? They just don't want the test. They don't want any test. And the third thing is the most offensive one and the most ridiculous one, that Mr. Carranza saying, okay, he is bribing some students. He said, oh, I get rid of the test so that you guys, you don't have to prepare for the test. You have more time to play. I feel ashamed by him, okay? As the chancellor of the nation's biggest public school system, I think he should know better than me that the test preparation and the reviewing after the test is the most important process of the learning process. Without the test, the students cannot be inspired to learn. I think most parents or students, I'm also a student myself for a long time, should agree with that. If he doesn't know that, then he shouldn't be in this post. He should be fair. Okay. And another thing he criticized, he said there are too many Asians. It's unfair to the Black and the Latino community. He said why? Because he said the Asian families have more resources. They are rich people. They can afford the test. First, that's totally lie. Okay, a few parents have mentioned the DREAM program, which is free to all low-income students who help to prepare the test. And second, and I told you that the learning process to pass the test, it doesn't start with the last 2 months that you prepare for the test. It starts from the kindergarten level. And the third most important thing, I know that most Asian families, most Asian students who enter into Stevenson are low-income family students. And actually, I can point out a few examples just in the audience, like Xiu Ying. Okay, she is a household, okay, and her husband is just doing the restaurant. It's not a restaurant owner, it's just a regular restaurant owner. And their family income is probably only like, I don't know, surely it's low income. And they don't speak English, and they can educate 2 kids. One is in Hunter High School, and another one in Stevenson. So the only reason that why there are so many Asians is I think is because the Asian families have traditions. They care about the children's education. So we sacrifice. They don't travel. They don't go to restaurants. So they save their money, time, and attention to their kids, and that's something should be encouraged and awarded, but not punished. So basically, I think Ms. Mayor and Mr. Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Please wrap up.
Okay, 1 minute. So they are
No, that was 1 minute, 2 minutes ago.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bob Press, and then this young lady, and then that's a wrap.
Thank you, Senators. And I was hoping to see more Bronx parents here, but obviously I didn't. My name is Robert Press. I was a PA president, president of School District 10's President's Council, and an officer on the Chancellor's Parent Advisory Council. I'd like to say one thing. I'd like to know what year the number of students that went into the specialized high schools from MS 141 in Riverdale was 91, because I was the PA president of that school beginning in 1999, and the school and the local newspapers beat up on us because out of a class of 350 students one year, in 1999, only 18 got into the 3 specialized high schools. The 91 students you probably referred to are from when MS 141 was a magnet school, and taking students from all over the district that would bust into 141. So be careful what you wish for when you say you want a magnet school. In August of 2000, oh, by the way, my daughter took the test for the specialized high schools for science, and she missed by a few points. She was able to stay in 141 when it became a high school, and she obtained scholarships to many schools, including NYU, but I'm glad that she took the one from Iona, which was 95% of her tuition. Okay, in August of 2018, the current chancellor was at the Charter School for Excellence in Parkchester, while other reporters, I'm now a reporter, in case you don't know, I'm sure you know, Mr. Senator Lou, both of you, other reporters asked the chancellor, how do charter schools get their funding and where do they get their students? I asked Chancellor Carenza, why is this charter school 2 grades ahead of the local Parkchester public schools? I then asked him, why is it that Bronx public schools in general are not performing up to the level of the public schools in other boroughs, which are close to 80%, while Bronx public schools perform at only 67%? The chancellor answered me that he and the mayor know that Bronx public schools aren't performing up to where they should be. He is new, that I should give him a chance and he would get back to me. I replied to Chancellor Carenza, those are the same answers that Chancellor Joel Klein gave me when he became chancellor in 2001. And like the one person before me said, it appears that in 20 years, nothing has changed at the Tweed Courthouse. Mayor de Blasio, every time I ask him about education, has tried to change the subject and not answer about the poor performance of Bronx and other schools in the city. The problem is with the mayor and the current chancellor. Unfortunately, the Senate and Assembly did something this year that shouldn't have been done, and that was renew mayoral control. Mayoral control needs to be ended because there needs to be accountability in our system. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And the young lady who will close us out.
Greetings and thank you so much for having us. We were a little
Can
tardy
you
because
introduce yourself?
We were a little tardy because we were coming from Brooklyn at another event that we were trying to help bridge the gap of other things that's going on in the city. But in the same token, I'm an educator, newly retired, a special ed, and it's a sin to where
Miss, do you have a name?
had to leave.
Do you have a name?
Patricia Charles, I'm sorry, Patricia A.
thank you.
Charles. I don't want to name my school because I don't want things to go back. Trust me, they look on things like that. But back in '95, we used to be an A school. We had honor students. We had wheelchair. We had behavioral problems. We had emotional problems. We had children that were even legally blind. And we handled every one of those students who did their best, but because they don't teach the children from where they are and how they can take a test from where they are. Some need to be read the test. Some can read the test, but if they can't read, once you read it to them and ask the questions, they will give you the answer. It was done. back then. But right now, what we have is just a system where they're allowing the children to run amok. They're tearing up the teachers. They're throwing things at the teachers. They're throwing chairs, and the behavior is not in order. Once you break that behavior, the learning process will begin. You support the family, but you have to teach the whole family, not just the child. You have to get the child, the parent, the aunt, the uncle, whoever is in place to help that child get through their entire school year. That's how you help bridge the gap of letting these children know that you're held responsible also for your education. When we work in this way, that helps bring the children up to par so that they understand there is a consequence and there is a reward. Once you get that reward, you're going to want to start doing so much better. The next child is going to want to do so much better, and so on and so on. But when we try to explain this to those who are in charge, it falls on deaf ear. And when we try to explain to them, come to the school and listen to what we're saying, and not just come in and sugarcoat or sweep things underneath the rug, to the point where now we are a renewal school, and it's a sin. So there's no way that we can bring it back up unless the nonsense stops. So when we put educators, they even took out so many of the senior teachers, they pushed them out, because now they're teaching the younger teachers the curriculum the way they want them to be taught, not how they can reach the children in order for them to learn what they need to learn. So I would have stayed in my school, and I would have waited a little longer before I left and completed my course. But because I see there's nothing going to be done, I chose to save myself. My son is a special needs young man, and this is why I went into special ed. And the special ed system was so corrupt for my son, but he came out better. He came out stronger because we made sure that he understood no matter how they treat you, just try to do your best. And finally, it's just that when we try to bring things to your attention, we want to sit down with the mayor or with those who are in charge, we're asking you to let us sit down with you. Don't just sweep us around the corner and say, oh, we're going to make that meeting, we're going to have a meeting, and you don't follow through. Because you need to hear from us. You need to hear from the educators. You need to hear from the parents. You need to be able to listen to us, because we're the ones that's in that system. We're the ones that's in that classroom. We're the ones that's watching those children, not want to do homework, classwork, and how could they do anything else or have any kind of extra curriculum when they're not held accountable for the things that they're supposed to be doing. Your homework, your attendance, all of those things are a percentage of what the children are held responsible for. Parents as well. And there's a lot of good parents out there that are suffering because the undesirable or the, how can I say, I'm going to put this nicely, they're misguided parents and children who are running amok, and this takes away from the children who are trying their best.
Thank
so
you, Mrs.
please
Charles.
listen to what we're saying to you, because I would have stayed. Trust me, I would have stayed.
Thank you.
But until they change the system, I'll go back even part-time.
Thank you, Ms. Charles. Well, thank you very much for being part of this hearing, this forum. It's 9:02, so it has been quite the afternoon, evening, into night. This is the third of a series of community forums. Our next one will be in Manhattan on May 23rd, next week. With that, let me turn it over to Senator Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman Liu. I appreciate, once again, your leadership in this matter, and I think that I appreciate each and every voice that came. Most importantly, like, even if you are pro Shashat or against Shashat, if you listen to what you're all saying the same exact things within the context of what you were doing. I just want to make sure that we illuminate that point, that everybody to a person said the same things. We want better schools for all of our children, whichever side of the aisle you may fall on. So it's very important to keep that frame of mind when we have these discussions. And again, thank you for your passion, even if I was trying to, keep a little calmer in here. But I do appreciate your passion, because you're passionate about your kids just like I am as a father. Thank you all for coming out, and Chairman Liu, once again, thank you for steering the ship in the right direction.
Thank you.